Tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Let's go with 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Yeah, 6316, North Yelp Road, still maintain 3,000, I'm 1 for the right.
3,000, let's go 6316.
Redwood 811.
Coast. We are coming to you live from the magical mystery abode of Uncle Jimbo's cabin, sharing quantum space between the Pacific Northwest and the Desert Southwest this evening, as it does every weekend here on spacedoutradio.com. We want to especially welcome in everyone listening at WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, anybody at spacedoutradio.com on Spreaker, everybody coming to us from the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Radio Network. We are so grateful for you, our listeners, and we do this for you. We do this for ourselves because it's interesting, but we also do it for you. We also want to give thanks to our guitar player, our guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. He creates the music that makes Spaced Out Radio Weekend rock, and we're grateful to him for doing that. If you want to find us, James Tyson, myself, or Dave Scott at Spaced Out Radio, check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, or give our Facebook page a like at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Facebook, you can follow me at Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn, download our shows from iTunes. We're also on Radio Guide FM, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com, we'll have some cool offers for you, our listeners, there as well. Make sure you check those out. I am so happy tonight to welcome author Douglas Robinson, who has been writing about vampires. He's a wonderful fiction writer, but he's been basing a lot of his work on real medical conditions, real vampirism, that there are actually real vampires in the world. And I did not know this. This is something that I've been alive long enough that I should have had some clue about. No, absolutely, totally, utterly clueless about vampires. Douglas Robinson is here tonight, and he's going to explain how he came up with his series, the Silently series novel, which is good writing, I can tell you. As a writer, this is good writing. But also, where he got the idea from it, what he knows about medical conditions that bring up vampirism, and probably some spooky stuff. I might be white-knuckling it tonight, guys. Douglas, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I have a question for you. What encouraged you to be interested in vampires?
As a child, say when I was about 7 or 8 years old in Chicago, my dreams turned to blood, meaning I started dreaming of myself dying a very violent death. I didn't have an interest in, quote, vampires, unquote, as such at that time, but, clearly something was going on that's not quite so easy to explain. When my family moved to Birmingham, Alabama, when I was about 13 years old, I saw the the Gothic soap opera show Dark Shadows for the first time. And, of course, the character Barnabas Collins as a vampire as you know him. Mm-hmm. I don't think I had the normal reaction to the show because I actually cried because of how Barnabas was portrayed. And, you know, in my storyline, I changed the spelling a little bit. Vampyr is how I spell it, vampiric. Mm-hmm. I talk about vampiric people like they're living people. I don't go for the undead, sleep in a coffin and all of that. And in my storyline, it's largely about a girl. Her name is Macon, and she is a vampiric girl, and she has lived, you know, hundreds of years. But at this college in Trenton, New Jersey, she meets and establishes a relationship with a young man named Thomas that does not know who or what she really is. In the course of the story, she's dealing with an obsessed blood donor, a killer vampiric person in the city, and a grieving father later when this young man that's pursuing her dies. Mm. And at the end of the story, Thomas is caught in the middle. At the end of Silently, Thomas is exposed to her blood through the fight. And in the second story, Rites of Passage, Thomas is starting to become vampiric himself. He is starting to become vampiric because he was exposed to her blood.
Now,
and I realized, okay.
No, my question is this something that can actually happen, or is this part of just the storyline that vampiric blood has is there an actual analogous real-life human, something that you can catch that can make you turn vampiric in one way or another?
The way that first of all, I didn't quote, how to say this. In 1983, my father died. Mm-hmm. And I took a fiction writing class that summer. And in the fiction writing class, as part of that summer and events that happened, I started seeing. What that means is that, you know, I looked up and it literally played in front of me like I'm watching a movie screen inside my head. I was in a class and we were sitting in rows, and, you know, you start with the first person in the row and then go to the second person and each one says something. Well, going up and down the rows, by the time it got to me, the person in front of me said, 2 men are dragging this semi-conscious woman down the street. When they said that to me, I looked up and literally saw 2 men dragging this semi-conscious woman down the street. Mm-hmm. And in my fiction writing class, I had to write a short story, so that was my first short story about a young man on vacation in Las Vegas. He sees 2 men dragging this semi-conscious woman into a bar. He follows them. To make a long story short, he gets framed for murder. There's a waitress there that believes him, but nobody else does. And then he's caught between the police and the mob, and someone's on the inside of the police department going to kill him if he turns himself in, so he's really stuck. Mm-hmm. But that was a short story. The second short story in my writing class was about Macon, the vampiric girl I told you about, John, the vampiric killer, and Thomas, and they're largely fighting at the end in this deserted old mansion. After the time of my fiction writing class ended, over the next 2 months, I saw the events of the Silently Serious storyline. You know, what happened before, what happened after. And so generally within 2 months, I saw what would be the equivalent of 16 novel-length stories full of stuff.
Wow.
Characters, events, locations, you know, all the things that happened in Macon's life earlier and later. So it was a substantial revelation.
So...
After that, I'm sorry,
okay,
go ahead.
Well, we have a lot of intuitives here, and so when you say you saw the story, and we have a lot of creative people as well, do you feel that it was a story that in some way had a reality to it, or it was a download, or how do you feel it happened that you saw the whole thing?
I think people like this really exist because I was praying for them for so long.
Mm-hmm.
They're lonely, they're abandoned, they're hated, they're feared, they're in a very tough situation, they have to drink blood to live. That's life for them is not glamorous like you would think it is on Hollywood. It's just not that way. Mm-hmm. I cared for them, and they were on my heart, and I prayed for them for so long. Mm-hmm. I do remember one time, I think I was about 13 or 14, I was talking to the Lord, mm-hmm. and I prayed, Lord, give them to me. I'll take them. Mm-hmm. And he did. And I think that's why I know what I know mm-hmm. about them, that, a normal person thinking about them wouldn't know what I know.
Right.
I think God gave it to me.
So your relationship with the Lord is a lot like mine, where you pray for individual guidance and then you follow it. It's not a question of do other people think that this is right, or do other people think that serving in this way is correct. It's an individual thing for you, because that's how it is with me. I mean, I do things that people I went to church with back when I was 13, 14 are like, how could you possibly do that? Well, because I prayed about it, and that was what I was given. That is my service. That's what I was given. And it sounds like you're very similar. Is that the case? It's a
lot of responsibility.
Yeah. To be in an area that people don't understand it, and they don't respect it, and they don't you're holding energy for something that is very, very misunderstood. So, good on you. So, how does this relate back to when you were a kid and you had the dream of blood? Do you think that ever happened to you, or do you think you had any relationship, or somehow ever in your, other than your spiritual life, had any vampires near you?
I don't bill myself, or I don't describe myself as someone that has, quote, vampires around me. First of all, I don't call them vampires generally mm-hmm. as much, because I call them vampiric people, because mm-hmm. that's how I saw them in the storyline. Mm-hmm. But
that's a good distinction to make.
It's not totally clear to me yet why this happened to me. I just know what I know. I can't, for lack of time and other things, maybe in this form, maybe in a different format, I could go into more detail. Mm-hmm. But, life for me in that early days was so hard. It's hard for me to recover memories mm-hmm. Before 1979. Everything else before that is kind of gray. And there's a lot of pain I went through, and I think as by the grace of God, actually, that I even survived and lived. I don't have dreams. That is, I go to bed at night, and I wake up in the morning, and I have no conscious recollection of, quote, what I dreamed that night. There are certain instances in my life when, very lucid and very clear spiritual vision would come to me, and I remember those. But by and large, as normal people do, I cannot remember my dreams. I think they were so bad I blanked them out and, moved on.
Wow. Is there anything, because I'm not familiar with vampiric people, it's, my area of weirdness is UFOs and Bigfoots. Is there anything that you have written about vampiric people in the Bible or in any text, any religious text, or is this just something that you know through direct conversations and prayer? I
think a little of both. Jesus was crossing the Sea of Galilee, I believe, to the land of the Gadarenes. Mm-hmm. And there he encountered a man with a demonic spirit that was living in the graveyards. He was so strong that he could break any chain you tried to bind him with. Mm-hmm. And, people were afraid of him, and rightly so. Mm-hmm. I think this, in Jesus' day, is a precursor to what I call our modern-day vampiric people. First of all, the devil gets people to sin. You notice that? Mm-hmm. And drinking blood is a sin, according to Scripture in the Old Testament. But people have been doing it for thousands of years before Christ came, and ever since. There are many more human blood drinkers, that is, people whacked out crazy in the head thinking that drinking blood is a cool thing, mm-hmm. and then what I call true vampiric ones. Mm-hmm. The people in my storyline, the people like Macon and the people like Thomas, the people like Janine, you meet her in the second story, have gone through what they call the change. Mm-hmm. In Macon's case, she was exposed to a vampiric person's blood. In Thomas's case, she was exposed to a vampiric person's blood. In Janine's case, she was led by her boyfriend into a blood cult and forced to drink blood. And mm-hmm. as part of that process, her body changed. She became vampiric in the true sense. Mm-hmm. I think it operates a lot like a curse. Mm-hmm. And it, aside from the very profound physical changes that make them a blood drinker, I think largely the devil does that to cause people to be afraid.
Yeah, fear and separation. That's the dark side. Be afraid and be separate and be alone, and then have people be afraid of you. That's how it works. I've found over time. I'm really curious when you're talking about. As you were talking, I'm thinking about things that I've seen here when I'm working. We have had hauntings in New Mexico. There was one specifically terrible haunting in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and several people worked on this case, and it was the Aztecs would tear out a heart and eat it, and drink the blood and throw people down their pyramids, so they would discard of the body of the person whose heart they were eating and the blood they were drinking. Well, apparently some of the Aztecs got up to New Mexico and started doing that with some of the early Puebloan tribes. And what ended up happening is that there were all these souls that were replaying this trauma over and over and over again in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. And would you consider that behavior and what the Aztecs were doing to be in some way a vampiric behavior?
Well, the fact that, as warriors, they believe that consuming blood is, you're consuming the flesh of your enemy, their heart. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to the original idea, even several thousand years before Christ. They knew that blood had something to do with it. Mm-hmm. Because in the Old Testament covenant, they were required to offer a lamb's blood mm-hmm. to cover their sins for a year. So they knew that blood, something had to do with it. So, sure. Mm-hmm. I can't say that that's necessarily vampiric because at least the way that I render the story, the people in my story are pretty much stuck. They can't go out to a restaurant and have a nice steak, or they can't go here and eat vegetables. They're pretty much stuck with having to drink blood for their sustenance. Mm-hmm. Now, they have to drink other things like water, mm-hmm. but they can't consume normal food like a human anymore. They're not human anymore. They're vampiric, and their bodies have changed.
Okay.
And
did you, when you were researching the book, or as you've gone along and writing the book, have you looked up conditions like I think it's porphyria, like allergy to light that also and has a fatigue that the people who have it tend to need to have something in blood, to some component of blood to drink that helps them. And then there's another.
In all honesty, no.
No,
I didn't research any of that.
Okay.
Those are like people point at this condition or that condition, and they think that vampiric people have something missing in their body, that they have to consume blood to get it, or they think, a variety of ideas. From what I've seen and from what I understand about it, their bodies are thrown forward into a very aggressive regeneration cycle.
Okay.
The change for them is an acceleration. Generally, and I say generally, it can happen to a person anytime from the time they reach puberty to about 22 years old. If you're much older than 22 and you're exposed to vampiric blood, you will die. If you're a child or too young, you will die. That's explained in the second story as Macon is trying to bring Thomas up to speed on what has happened to him, and she also warns him not to associate with all the many different varied kinds of blood drinkers other than true vampiric ones. And he's rather astounded that all of this exists because he never knew that, humans would do that, but they do. And he, in the very first story, he didn't believe her. He thought she was crazy. And then once John attacked and he's caught in the middle, then he has to watch her, and he can see that she's not a crazy person. And finally, in the second story, they have to come to a reconciliation. And in her case, she was so guilt-ridden that she had caused this terrible thing to happen to him. She blamed herself, actually, that, she separated from him and hoping that he would be all right, but she knew because she could hear the voice of his blood even across the distance from how far apart they were. She still knew that he was becoming vampiric, and she knew where he was. So with the help of a friend that convinced her that he would have a better chance of survival, she did go to him.
Wow. In these stories, and you telling us that you downloaded them, which a lot of us can believe. We receive downloads and things, but how much of yourself is in them? How much do you have a character who you really relate to as being like you?
Oh, none of them really. I'm not personally in any of them, but I'm in all of them, if that makes any sense as a writer. They're all a part of me, but I'm really not any of them.
Okay.
But I know that when I'm writing, say, as Thomas's point of view, that I'm portraying him to the world. Of when I'm writing as Macon's point of view, I'm portraying her to the world, and it just sort of flows that way.
So you're
it's
giving
miraculous,
them a voice.
Really.
Yeah, you're giving them a voice. Their characters, they're existing. They have their own reality, and you're giving them a voice. So this book series is called the Silently series, and the book that I received is called Rites of Passage, and literally I just got it on Thursday. So which number in the series am I holding right now?
That is the second. If you haven't received the first one, I thought it was sent. I could send that to you.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I I thought it had been sent to you. My apologies.
Well, we have a weird mail system. He might not have been able to put both of them in the mailbox, and so one might be at the post office. It's New Mexico. We do things slow here. It's mañana all the time, which is someday we'll get to it. Let's see. So, do you have a passage from this book that you might want? Do you have it with you, and do you have something you might want to read?
I don't have one in front of me, but I will tell you one of my favorite parts of the story, just to mention it. The story is told in alternating points of view between Thomas Macon and his sister Kimberly, and it alternates with a vampiric girl by the name of Janine. Janine has been stuck in this blood cult in Helena, Montana. They drink blood basically 10 times a year when the full moon is full. And largely that's done by human sacrifice, and they're a very powerful and very organized group, and she is stuck in this cult, this blood cult. And the leader of the blood cult where she is, his name is Nolan, and Nolan has a little girl that Janine raised. Her name is Alicia. Janine finds out that Nolan is planning to sacrifice his own daughter, and she loves Alicia, so she takes Alicia from him and runs. And the biggest part of the story is she's traveling to parts of Wyoming, parts of Illinois, she's running. And Nolan is tracking behind her. I think the part that's really one of my favorites is when Janine is trying to explain to Alicia that her father wants to kill her, and then she has to explain about herself, because she realizes that Alicia will be living with her and traveling with her, and Alicia will very likely see her drink blood because she has to continue to survive while she's running with Alicia. And so I think probably the first endearing part of this, because Janine really was a very godly girl before she changed. And she's just having to do what she has to do to survive. And she loves God. The Lord is her Savior. But she is stuck in this thing, and she is so ashamed of what she has become that as she's talking to Alicia, they're in a little pavilion, and she doesn't know if those are tears on Alicia's face or if water is dripping from her wet hair, but she bows her head and thinks, well, how much farther from God can I fall? And she starts crying, and then Alicia starts crying because Alicia loves her as her mother. And that moment between them and the innocence of Janine keeping her, I guess you could call it a goodness, a kindness. And of course she had to be very brave to deal with all of this with Nolan and take Alicia. But there was a lot of innocence in her in spite of the horrendous way that she had to watch these people be murdered month after month after month after month and sacrificed in front of her. She retained so much of her relationship with God, even though she was an outcast. And wow. I think my favorite parts of the story are the interaction between Alicia and Janine. And, Alicia loved her, and it didn't bother her that Janine was a blood drinker because she's not afraid of her. She wanted to be with her, and only at the end does she get dragged away from Janine by Nolan. And it's really the story of their relationship and what happens at the end, of course.
Of love and unconditional love and acceptance, and instead of judgment and judgment and shame. That's innocent. That's really wonderful. It's interesting to me, and I don't know if you thought about this, because I know you saw this all at once. It's interesting to me. I live in a town where we have a lot of artists, but we have a lot of people who have addictions. And their addictions have caused them to do things that they're not usually going around killing people, but they're stealing things, and they can't stop. And some have been cured through spiritual healing, or have gone into remission from their addictions through spiritual healing. But really, they really don't have a choice. And it's such a small community when somebody runs off the rails, and we have such big things like Facebook now, that we will end up with a bunch of people on Facebook, not saying any names, but condemning the person who ran off the rails with their addiction. Who's stealing the mail, who's broken into so-and-so's house. And everybody knows who it is, because it's 250 people in the town. But this reminds me of that. I mean, when you are, I don't know if you have a congregation or when you're at church, could this also be like an allegory for people who are suffering from such severe addiction that they have to do things that are not right? And because it feels like that to me living in this town, because I'm surrounded by addicts, of one kind or another.
I think that's part of your revelation. You sound like you're compassionate for them. Mm-hmm. Just like I know what I know about mine, what you know about yours. Mm-hmm. And it's the lives of people that are at stake. And, that's why God is gracious, and people should remember that. You don't want to shoot nobody, right. Especially when they're doing all they could do.
Right, especially when they're, I mean, the people who are doing the things around this town, they have a physiological need to be doing what they're doing, and it's not the right thing, but they have not kicked that physiological need, or they haven't gotten the healing that they can get. So in your stories, you've got 16 stories to go. In vampiric people, is there any healing for them as you go along? I don't want you to give away the whole thing, but do you come up with any sort of healing, or is it just allowance and acceptance?
Macon herself. Now, first of all, let me explain. There are 12 modern-day stories, mm-hmm. and there are 4 historical stories.
Oh, wow.
Macon is in every story because it's her story. Mm-hmm. She was born in the winter of 1698. Her mother was Norwegian. Her father, basically, she was raised in the part of what is now Germany, mm-hmm. although the country wasn't Germany at the time. Mm-hmm.
Was it Mecklenburg? Like North Germany and Mecklenburg? Or do you
actually I don't know so much as what the city, but I know she was along the foothills of the Harz mountain range, mm-hmm. sort of in the middle of the country.
Yep, that's Mecklenburg. Yeah. The reason it's beautiful there. My great grandmother was from there, so I'm like, yeah, Mecklenburg. Oh no. Okay, go ahead.
Well, that would be amazing, but each of the 4-story blocks has an undercurrent in it. It repeats the pattern of love, grace, compassion, and right with God. For example, in Silently, Macon actually does fall in love with Thomas, and I mean, she really loves him. At this time, Thomas has learned the hard way what she is, so everything he feels and thinks about his girlfriend has gone up in smoke. He thinks his life is pretty much over, but it isn't. But she loves him. In the second story, Grace keeps showing up around Janine while she's running from Nolan. And, God is gracious, and that's something I was trying to portray in the story for her. In the third story, compassion shows up. And then the fourth story, right with God, shows up. And then when I go the next block of 4 stories, that pattern repeats again. Mm-hmm. In the sacrifices story, which I think is the 9th modern-day story, Macon herself becomes a Christian. Mm-hmm. That is, she accepts Jesus as Lord. She's chained into a little dungeon-type area awaiting sacrifice. That is, to be burned at the stake. In the course of that story, Corey is talking to her. But the thing about a vampiric person, especially if you're trying to talk to them about God or Jesus or anything like that, you have to see them first. And I put see in quotation marks, see them. Mm-hmm. Corey had to see Macon before she would listen to him. What that means, you have to understand what they have become and choose to love them anyway. When you're faced in your community with these people that have these different addictions, it sounds like you do that for them because you care, you realize they're in a tough spot, and you care for them even though they can't fix it. Mm-hmm. Until Corey saw her, if you're dealing with a vampiric person, until you see them, they will not listen to you in terms of anything to do with God or forgiveness or any of that. But once you see them, then they'll open up their heart to you. The second thing you need to know is that once they become a Christian, they still have to drink blood. Macon struggled with this in the next story, Heaven's Gate. She had to continue to drink blood because of the physical change in her body would not let her stop. Mm-hmm. The physical change in her body will not let them stop. And, I know the church talks about a lot of healing and a lot of stuff like this, but I advise against approaching them that way. I don't have any peace on churches doing that. Mm-hmm. Now, the people that are in these different addictions, I know that drug addictions have been broken by the power of God. I've seen testimonies to that, so it's possible. But I make a point to say that, your body has an addiction to oxygen. Mm-hmm. If someone tried to cure you of your addiction to oxygen, you would die.
Right.
I make that point about vampiric people in the same way. If you try to force them to not drink blood, they will die. And you're not really solving their problem, you're just killing somebody.
To me, what I like about your stories and what I like about what you've just said is that you're not preaching to the choir, my experience with the evangelical churches is there's a lot of judgment that's unnecessary. There's a lot of, oh, you've got this problem, we can fix you, or oh, that's wrong. But my experience is that the real work is compassion, and the real work is not having that sort of short-sighted, knee-jerk reaction that we often get in the paranormal. I have had part of my story has been having to be compassionate to alien beings who I once felt did terrible things to me. But then I'm in a position of turning around and turning the other cheek and doing something in compassionate action for them. And this is not something that they talk about in church. First of all, alien beings, they must be of the devil because, why would God do that? But you know what I'm saying? So you get your first knee-jerk reaction, which is, oh, they abduct people? Oh, they must be evil. Oh, they do this? Oh, they must be evil. But I like your story, especially for the paranormal community, because a lot of things that we deal with are A, misunderstood, B, prejudged more than once, prejudged multiple times, C, not as inherently evil or bad or malicious as they might appear to be to somebody who looks at them superficially and through the eyes of judgment. So I feel this. I don't know if you agree with me, but I like this story because it can help people in the paranormal come to terms with what they're dealing with. If you're an alien abductee, are aliens really evil, or are they just different? What are you learning that allows you to grow, that allows you to become more open and allowing and accepting and compassionate? So anyway, that's how this is striking me, that this is a good story for people who are in the paranormal community, that this message is good.
Our logo in Silently Publishing is a wolf howling into the darkness, into what would make most people afraid. But underneath that, I have the phrase, without love, nothing changes. So the responsibility really is on each individual, and each individual makes a choice as to whether they will love or not. That's really the driving force in why I'm writing this storyline. I know what I know, and I'm doing my best to see that vampiric people have a chance and that human race has a chance. Because one day you're going to find out that they really do exist, and your world, human, is going to fall apart when you do. So I'm just trying to give you some clue as to what a vampiric person is and how they think and how they feel and what they'll do and what they can do. So when you ever meet one, just be nice, be friendly.
Be reasonable. Yeah. No.
The thing about them is that they know, the person they drank blood from today, they know not to go killing off their food source. And in this case, the food source is you, people, most of the time. They can drink animal blood, but they go back to human blood, usually. But they know not to kill off their food source because they can get blood from you again, say, a month from now.
Right.
So don't, be cautious because they are predators. I mean, seriously predators. But don't think the sky is falling just because you've met one, because they're like everybody else trying to survive. And like I say, they know they have to be circumspect and careful and not just go on a killing rampage. And those that do start killing like that, they don't last very long. Yeah. Something happens to them eventually. So I'm trying to give you hope and a little perspective before you actually meet one. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to meet one. I'm sort of like the person who's like, okay, aliens, interesting, don't ever want to meet one. But I would bet that I may have already met one and I just didn't know it. We had J.C. Johnson on the show talking about super predators this week. And would you consider vampiric people to be in league with other super predators in the paranormal?
I'm not sure what other super predators you're referring to because I didn't really study all of that. I know what I know, but
he was talking about areas. He was talking about werewolves and like Dogman. Dogman has come up, and I have seen a skinwalker in my life, which is like a cross between a human and a dog. He looks like a werewolf, which is not a very nice thing. It was not a good thing when it happened. But so that was one of the super predators, was a combination man, dog, werewolf, or wereperson that he studies. And there tend to be the skinwalker, the Navajo skinwalker, and the Ute area skinwalkers, which is here in the Four Corners. There was always some sort of ritual that was done for a witch or someone to turn into a shapeshifter, but the shapeshifter's form tends to be the werewolf form, but they could also become a deer or a bear or something else, but the main form is werewolf. So what he was talking about was very similar in that, this could be transferred to others as well with a bite or with through contact. Anyway, it was very interesting because it was like, oh, vampires, werewolves, yeah. So that he was talking about those as being super predators, and I didn't hear much about vampires from him, but yeah, interesting. Okay, here's a question you don't have to have the answer to it. What percentage of any population, or the population of the United States and Canada, what percentage do you think might be vampiric people?
Oh, now, in that case, that's something I cannot tell you, even if I knew, because there are plenty of people that are polishing off their gun right now.
I know.
Go hunting them out. And like if I told you that 1 in 10 people are vampiric in large cities, now that's not true, but
right.
If I gave you a number to shoot for, 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, you would go out and start eyeing these people, and you would line them up to start aiming at them. So I can't give you a number, except to say that it's easier for them to live in larger cities, larger populations, because they have more people on which to acquire a blood source.
Right. Yeah. I've lived in the middle of nowhere, and there's no people to acquire a blood source from when you live in the middle of nowhere. So, or other things. JC was talking about that in Denver, that they have all these animal trails, and he said, those are now super predator trails through the town of Denver, this is reminding me of that. Do you have a sense from your downloads of where our modern relationship with vampiric people is going to go in the next 100 years, next 50 years, next 100 years?
I don't think you have to wait that long for the next real big thing to happen. Okay. Things for them are bad. I just sense it. Mm-hmm. I mean, incredibly, really bad. So, I hope that you don't find out in a bad way that these people exist. But, Jesus quoted in Mark 4:22, there's nothing hidden except it to be revealed.
Exactly.
So he said there is nothing hidden that won't be known at the end. And since we're quickly approaching the end of time as we know it in this dispensation, things are speeding up. In the Old Testament, in Zephaniah chapter 1, is largely the model of what happens when the world discovers vampiric people exist. I was given Joel 2, chapter 2, verse 2, that talks about a day of darkness, a day of gloominess and clouds and thick darkness. Mm-hmm. In my mind, that scripture explains the manifestation of vampiric people along those 4 pathways. And we don't have time really to discuss what those pathways are, but that scripture also occurs in Zephaniah chapter 1. In a time of wasteness and desolation and hard times, my revelation of who I call my children are in the middle of this hard time. And then you see trumpet, alarm, people staggering around as if they're blind, gathering into fenced cities, and then blood poured out like dust. Hopefully this is not the way that I want people to recognize that vampiric people exist. But the warning from that scripture is that it will happen eventually, and when it does, I don't see it being a very good thing for people. I was with a friend in my former job. She was a receptionist, a lovely Christian lady, one of the most loving, kind people that you know. But I was standing with her one day, and I talked about vampiric people. The first words out of her mouth is, "Oh, we have to kill them." Mm. And I was kind of surprised because she's such a kind-hearted person other than that. But she said, well, they can't be allowed to exist. And this is a person that, loves God, loves people, loves everybody. But it was just something about this, and you're dealing with a blood drinker that just knocks everybody's sensibilities way off. Mm-hmm. They react first. And so, like I say, I'm trying to keep the world from blowing apart when you figure out they exist.
Know that this is a thing, but also you're opening up people's minds to an alternative. This really can open up people's minds to, even if you are presented with a reality that you don't expect, with a reality that you want to judge as something evil, something bad, something to be eradicated, something to be eliminated, rather than demonize the other, rather than demonize the thing you don't know or understand. As a spiritual ethic and a Christian ethic, understand, really try to see, really try to be open and allowing and accepting and not being in a place of judgment, not being in a place of, oh, well, yeah, of course, that's evil, that needs to be eradicated. And there's too much of that, I would say, just for Christians in general and in the world. There is too much of that knee-jerk reaction. And people in the paranormal are getting that. It's like, wait, Bigfoot isn't necessarily going to rip you limb from limb, and aliens aren't necessarily going to hurt you. And guess what? Vampiric people have their own problems. So I think it's the right message across the board. And I really think you're doing a good job of sharing the message. And whether or not somebody believes that there are vampiric people or that they will ever meet one, the message that you're sharing throughout your stories is a message that can be applied to human beings, to super predators, to Bigfoot, to different races of aliens, and is good for the soul. I think it's a good message for the soul, for and
you are very, very kind. Thank you for those positive comments.
Yeah. So the books are the book I have in hand is called Rites of Passage. It's book number 2 in the Silently series novel. It's by Douglas Robinson. It's lovely writing. It's very, very good writing. I wish I wrote fiction. Well, I don't write fiction. I write memoir, but I wish I wrote as well. Where can people get this book?
There is another Douglas Robinson who writes, but if you search for the Silently series storyline, you can find them on Amazon or Kindle.
Great. And this is a kind of book you can spend a weekend or a week, or, if you have a week off or during summer vacation. These are, I don't know about the first one, but this would take me about a week to get through, maybe a little less on vacation. And it's a good story. I've thumbed through it and looked at some of it. It's really interesting writing. Douglas, thank you so much for being with us on Cosmic Passport tonight. Tomorrow night, you should tune in. Eric Markham and I are going to talk about the medical conditions of that vampiric, maybe not the vampiric people you're talking about, but some of the medical conditions that people have that make them want to drink blood or need to drink blood that are known. And so that'll be on this time tomorrow night. And everybody who's listening, thank you for listening. And
hi there, this
Douglas,
is Dave
thank
Scott,
you so much for
and I
being
would like
here
to
with
invite
us.
you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Saturday, or early Sunday morning for all of you in other parts of the world, or Sunday afternoon for my friends in Australia. It is I, James Tyson, broadcasting to you from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network, here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast, Cascadia, the Pacific Northwest. And I want to thank you for dropping in tonight. And I want to thank everybody down who's listening at spacedoutradio.com, the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, High Plains Talk Radio, and our friends in Noonan, Georgia at WQEE 99, The Key. Let's rock The Key in Noonan. And to all our friends down in the greater Atlanta area tonight, right here in our show. If you're really old, that was a Ed Sullivan imitation. But tonight on our show, we welcome back, and when I say welcome back, she hasn't been around for a year or so, but we've got Marianne Morgan. Now, from the time she was a small child, Marianne Morgan has been able to communicate with what she calls those on the other side. Marianne now uses her gifts to help and counsel people as a psychic detective and medium. She is one of the top psychics available today, which is shown by her extensive and impressive clientele, including a president, actors, musicians, politicians, defense attorneys, and bereaved families. Marianne also works aggressively as an analytical intuitive profiler, or what you may know as a psychic detective, and a crime scene analyst for numerous governmental and law enforcement agencies at local, national, and international levels to solve violent crimes perpetrated against humanity. Also, her determination to locate lost children and assist in cases involving crimes committed against children is a major part of her life's work. She has worked extensively on high-profile cases, including but not limited to Lacy Peterson, Natalie Holloway, and Caylee Anthony. Marianne did extensive work with Dr. Gary Schwartz at the University of Arizona, Tucson, in the Human Energy Systems Laboratory, and is currently involved in other ongoing research studies with other leading scientists in a variety of fields. Dr. Schwartz says that Marianne has exceptional psychic gifts and skills that have been documented under controlled laboratory conditions. Marianne has the capability to walk the talk and to reveal to each of us how we can live a full and spiritual life. Her intentions are of the highest order. Now, if you've heard of Marianne, you've probably heard of her from a number of television shows. She's been on Psychic Detective, The Today Show, Nightline, Discovery Channel, Biography Channel, Psychic Investigators, and many, many more. She's also been involved with peace activism. She was asked to join the UN Women's Action Committee, which fosters and promotes peace benefiting women and children in countries where there is conflict. Marianne has ventured to war-torn and impoverished countries on this part of her mission. Marianne, I would like to welcome you back to Spaced Out Weekend. How are you?
Hi, James. I'm good. How are you?
I am well. I am very, very well. It is wonderful to have you back.
Well, thank you.
What the dickens have you been up to? I know last time we talked, probably way too much. Last time we talked,
way too much. Yeah.
Way too much. You've now you've got I didn't mention this, but you've actually got a number of books too. You have Living in the Moment. Is that is that a new book, or is that one that I've had kicking around here for a while? Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my old ones, but I have a new one, and getting ready to release it. It's called Just One Question, and that is because for the longest time on my website, I had a button where you could just ask me one question, and I would get thousands of questions that people were asking, not just one, but every person or individual could ask just one question, and then I would email them back. And when I was doing my radio show, I used to answer just one question every week. But since I'm not doing my radio show, because I do not have time to do that anymore, like you do, which is wonderful, and most people don't know, but James is very active about getting guests for his show and trying to make it the very, very best that he can. And it takes a lot of work. 1 hour of TV or radio show takes about a week's worth of production. So most people don't even know that. But anyway, back to my book. When I was doing my radio show, I would get these questions, and so I just compiled the very best questions, and I put them in a book, and the first book is called Just One Question, and then the next book is called Just One More Question, and then the final book, which I'm still writing, is Just One Final Question. So that's what I'm on right now. And then I'm also writing 2 movies right now at the same time.
What?
So I can't talk about those right now, but I'm working on those with different people from Los Angeles or Hollywood. However you'd like to say that.
Very cool.
Yes.
That's very, very interesting, young lady. Very interesting.
Yes.
And if you want to,
can I
go ahead.
Say something? One of those books actually is about my great grandfather because he worked with Tesla. And he and Tesla and Edison all worked together. And my great-grandfather had 90 inventions. And so one of the movies is about him and his buddy Tesla. And I have all his journals. So that's what I'm writing it about.
That is very, very cool. What was your grandfather's name?
Frank Wyatt Prentice. Prentice. Prentice.
That is cool.
He was the first one to, he had, his invention was called the Earth Energy Tap, and he revolutionized the railroad. And so what he did was he made it to where instead of having to get out and switch train tracks, which a lot of people died back in that time period when they were doing that, because they would get their legs amputated, they would fall, into trains and so on and so forth, because the tracks probably weren't like they are today, on train tracks. So anyway, he made the switches where you could remotely switch the train tracks, and he did it here in the United States, and he also did it in Europe for all over Europe, actually. They took him over there so he would do that. And so he and Tesla worked together for a long, long time. They had the first power plant in the New York area, electrical power plant, together. My great-grandfather and Tesla. So, yes.
Oh,
a lot of people don't. Had we ever talked about that, James?
No, we didn't. We have not talked about that. That is a very cool.
Yes, and he was very psychic too. Just so you know.
Okay. How did you know I was going to ask
question.
that? Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering exactly. And I think about you and how you can tap into, the other side, but probably get a little peek into the future. So I wonder if he was getting information about things which helped him do or create his patents and his what he invented.
You'll just have to wait and see the movie.
Oh, man. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight, Marianne. Thanks. Yes, it was. Thank you very much. Now, with a family like this, Marianne, when did it really kick in for you, or was that all you knew, that that you had the ability to see and hear things that other people didn't?
When I was about 5 years old, I had an experience where I was sitting in front of my grandmother's beauty shop in Watonga, Oklahoma, with my feet in the road. And it was a dirt road. It wasn't like it was, major highway or something. And I was playing with a stick and with red ants. There's a red ant hill. And I was poking at the ants, and my mother was sitting on the porch of the house, which was probably about 20 feet away. And I was poking at the ants, and all of a sudden I heard this voice say, "Marianne, you better stop that." And I kind of looked around, and I remember looking over at my mom, and my mom was looking down, reading actually in a magazine. And so I continued on, and this was a man's voice that I heard. And the next time I heard it again, it said, "Marianne, you're going to get bit by those ants." And I looked around again, and I was like, who is that? And then after that, I didn't listen to the voice, and I got bit by the ants. So then I went up to my mom on the porch, and I said, why didn't you come and get me, as opposed to just yelling at me, telling me? She goes, "I didn't yell at you." And I'm like, whoa. So that was the very first time I heard my guide who talked to me. And the reason I know that is because later that day, something else happened. And over the years, I finally saw him. And so to explain that, a guide is, before you come here, you have somebody from the other side that is somebody that, a spirit, a soul, that watches over you. You have a guardian angel, you have a spirit guide, and you can have guardians who are like either a guardian angel or a guardian from your family line, from your DNA, that has to be protected to keep everything in line with the DNA from the other side, from the soul groups. And so right after that, I figured out who that was, and his name is One Feather, and which is interesting because I do have a lot of Indian in my family. Not a whole lot, but enough to where it was remarkable, and I didn't know that at the time. And so I got I talked to One Feather. That's my guide, and he literally has helped me my whole life. So that was the first guide that I talked to. Then I figured out that I could actually hear people that had crossed over as well. And so that's, I discovered it as I got older, how much more in-depth my gift really was. That was one part of it, because I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairaudient, I'm clairescent. I remote view, I'm an empath, and I jump time with my mind.
That jumping time, explain that to me. Mm-hmm. I've heard people talk about it, but I've never really interviewed someone about time jumping.
Well, okay, in the first place, time is an illusion that we have in this reality. And without getting into really, some deep and really heavy stuff, so if it's eternity and there is no beginning and there is no end, then when most people believe that there's reincarnation, Well, I don't believe in reincarnation. It's all happening at the same time because there's no beginning, no end, right? So how can there be reincarnation? So what I believe is that we're energy. And what they explain to me, and I will say this, none of this is really my belief. It's what I've been explained I've been explained about from those on the other side. And so anyway, when I jump time with my mind, I'm actually just jumping into time, and I look at different sections of it, and it comes to me in these like little bubbles, I can't even describe it. I just jump in and I look through the vortex and I see these bubbles, and they have like a period of time that's happened, an event. I will call it an event as opposed to a period. And I look at that event, and that event for a person, if I'm doing a reading for a person, could be that it hasn't happened yet. It could be past, present, or future. That's the way it is. And so I can look in, and then I have to clarify what I'm actually looking at, because sometimes it can appear to be the present or something in the future when it's already happened to the person.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I just jump. I just literally close my eyes, or actually sometimes I can look through the vortex and I just see, all these little like time bubbles, and I look into it, and it's not like you can pop it or something. I'm just saying I'm using the definition of a bubble so somebody could visually get that in their head and see that this event that's happened in space and time for this individual, that's what's there.
I see.
And like when I'm working on a missing person, right? There was a young lady, I worked on her case in Arizona this last year, and she was murdered by a man that she went out on online dating. And she had gotten into this online dating thing. Very dangerous, ladies, very dangerous. Do not do it. Or if you do go out on online dates, or gentlemen either, it can be very dangerous. You don't know who you're really going out with, and it's something I would never do. So anyway, and look at me, I can usually pretty much read what people are like ahead of time, and I would still never do that. You're putting yourself in a very, very awkward position. So anyway, this woman had gone out, a woman, she was 20 years old, had gone out on this date, and this man actually murdered her in an apartment. And then he took her body out, dumped her in a car, and he burned the car out. And that happened and she was in the Arizona desert. Well, the family called, and a member of the family called and wanted me to help find her. Well, they called 3 days after it had already happened. So what I did was I used several of my gifts. I went back in time, quote, back in time, to that actual moment and looked and saw what kind of person she had gone out with, because not only has she gone out with one person, she'd been going out with like 6 different people online. So they figured that it was one of the people, so they had to know what he looked like. So I went into the bubble in time and looked and could see what this person looked like. And so I helped, try to help the police, identify the person. Then I tried, I looked, I remote viewed. So once I figured out in the timeline where I was, I could remote view other instances that happened and get a very clear picture about exactly what had happened, when, where, and I could give those details. So does that answer your question, or did I go way, way off, James?
Yeah, I just asked you how you were. No. I don't know what you're doing here. Who are these people and what are they doing in my kitchen? I know we've talked about this, the bubble the bubbles that you see.
I had explained that, yes.
Yeah, and I've honestly thought that, like, when I picture it in my own head, I picture like little kids blowing bubbles, and there's many of them floating around. Or is that too cartoonish? Is that too general? Do you see just small snapshots? Sometimes I describe it like that.
Yes, but seriously, when I tell you it's a bubble, when I look over there on the other side, it's like millions and trillions and just all these moments of time, and they're over there. And, I have to kind of filter through and see where I'm at. And I, that's the best way of describing it, because it's just like bubble of time for me. And that's the way I describe it. But that's just one of the things I do. Then I can actually go in, excuse me, and I can tune into the other side, and I'm like, Gary Schwartz used to call me AT&T to the other side, to the afterworld. And what I would always correct him. I'd say, that's not the afterworld. That's the world. This is the unreality. That's the reality. When we leave here, that's where we go. And so we're just here for school. So I forgot what you asked me. I get off on that.
Oh, no, that was fine. I was wondering if, like, when you see it, you see this, all these snapshots of time. The way I pictured it in my head, it was like I say, with the kids and all the bubbles going, and you were going to say sometimes you see it like that.
Sometimes I do. It's like when you're looking at a cartoon on, for a comic strip, like a cartoon, a comic strip, not a cartoon, but a comic strip, and you see the little,
where they put their,
like a bubble, where they put the words. Well, that's what I see. Exactly like what I see. Only they're a little bit more round.
Okay.
They're not oval.
Do you see text, or do you see a little, let's call it a video
movie.
Of something? You see a
like
movie,
a little
trailer of what's going on. How do you then decide what you focus in on?
Well, that's when I actually am talking to the person, like I'd be talking to you, and I'd say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Does this relate to you in any way? And then, most of the time it blows their mind. So I have to get past the blowing the mind thing. Like, how could you know that happened to me, in that moment of time? And yeah. And then I have to, differentiate. If I'm doing a read, like this young woman that was murdered, it was her cousin that had actually called me. So then I have to figure out if I'm seeing the cousin's moments of time, or am I seeing her moment of time? So then I have to qualify, and then I ask, a lot of times too, I'll ask if I can speak to the person on the other side. Can you come here? Can I talk to you? And when you die, when you leave this reality, if it is a brutal death, if it is something where someone has imposed their will on your free will, and it wasn't one of your times that you choose to leave, sometimes those on the other side, the ones that meet you when you leave here, that reacclimate you to the fact that you're no longer in this reality, they are very protective, and they will not let me talk to them. I've had that happen more than one time, more than I can count, where I will ask to speak to somebody, and instead of it being that person, it will be an aunt that's passed over or crossed over, or an uncle, a grandmother, a mother. Loretta Bowersock, when Terry Bowersock, her daughter, called me, I was sitting in front of my home in Oklahoma, and they were in Arizona, and she called me, and I don't, maybe our listeners wouldn't know, but Loretta Bowersock was murdered in Phoenix, Arizona, many years ago, and I worked on that case. That's the one that was on Psychic Detective. But anyway, when she called me, they would not let me talk to Loretta. It was her mother and Loretta's mother. And so Terry talked to her grandmother on the other side through me, and asked questions and got answers. And the fact that she was talking to me, because Loretta was missing, she was not even presumed dead at the time. They thought she had been kidnapped. And I kept telling Terry, no, she's crossed over. Your grandmother's talking to me about her and telling me she's not letting me talk to her, but she's there. So a lot of times that's what happens. There's somebody on the other side that you want to talk to, and if it's a tragic death, like say for instance if a child is murdered, there's somebody on the other side that has met that child when that soul has come to the other side, and under no circumstances will they allow you to talk to them. In the first place, the child is not acclimated to where they're at. The second place, they're protective because they know that the will has been imposed upon by another person. But by God, they'll tell you what happened. So that's, excuse me. And so that's what I do. I talk to whomever will talk to me about the situation.
Yeah, it's...
and I also clarify before I do that I'm talking to a good soul as opposed to those that are on the other side that are maybe negative.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about that, and I'm just going to kind of summarize what you were saying. If will is imposed on somebody and it's a violent death, basically even, non-violent here, I'll poison you, but it's not your time. It wasn't your time to cross. And that choice was taken away from you. You then cross over, and you are probably a little bit ticked and a little bit miffed that this isn't where I'm supposed to be right now, and you're not ready for it. No,
you wouldn't be that way. You wouldn't be ticked or miffed. No, you would not hold that kind of, unless it's a suicide. Okay, a suicide, let me just say, a suicide, you go to a void away from the light, not hell. It's just a void away from the light. And when you are there, you have to be redeemed to come out of there. So that one is a little bit different. However, if your free will has been imposed upon and you're taken to the other side, you don't hold anger. There's not the negative in that arena over there. There's only positive. It's heaven. You can't have that there. What you are is unaware and not oriented to the fact that your time has been taken. You know that it's been taken away, but it takes a minute to be reoriented to the fact that you're no longer here in this reality. That's how come sometimes souls get stuck in between, because sometimes there's it's so quick, and if it's a negative, and that person, if that soul is a negative, then the twinklies, the angels and all, might not, or the guide or the family guardian might not come and meet the person, and they get stuck because they didn't go to the void and they didn't go into the light. That's why there's ghosts sometimes. However, if you go to the other side and it's a violent and it's taking you off of your blueprint, because before you come here, you do a blueprint. You've heard of that before, James.
Yeah, the Akashic record kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But it's not even that. It's a blueprint. It's on this huge marble, for lack of a better description, it's on this marble table in one of the great halls, and everyone has a blueprint before you come here, and you have about 4 or 5 times that you might choose to go ahead and leave, and you know when those time periods are, and you're pretty much okay with it, and then because you're supposed to go home, right? It's when when it throws a monkey wrench into the timeline, and somebody, imposes upon your free will, and it's not your free will to leave. Then that's when you're over on the other side, everything is discombobulated because that wasn't when you were supposed to come back. So therefore, there is someone over there that is protective of you. And that's who I was dealing with on several different ones. And that's who I deal with a lot. And so I'm always like, who is this? What relation are you to them? And usually it's a family member. It's not like Joe Blow from, angel heaven looking out after the person. It's somebody in the DNA line. Which brings me to the other thing I told you I wanted to talk about the DNA.
Yeah.
How important it is. And I want to tell your listeners not to fall for this trick that is here in this reality right now about somebody, giving your DNA to find out your ancestry or your, if you are genetically predisposed to cancer or any of these things. I have been told specifically to put that out there about do not give your DNA freely. Do not do it. There's something coming in the future, and I don't know what it is, and they haven't told me. All I know is I've been told, do not give my DNA. Of course, then I laugh and I go, oh, well, yeah, they could clone, 100 me's, and then they'd have, 100 psychics running around out there. I thought, I'm so important. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
My cousin sent...
I know I'm jumping all over.
My cousin sent our DNA to find out what rock we crawled out of. And his father was my father's brother. So I haven't sent mine out, but...
No, do not do that. I forbid you to do that.
Yes, dear.
Don't do that because seriously, they told me, from the other side, Marianne, do not give your DNA. And I've had so many things come up where it's been thrown in front of me and put in my path. Oh, we can just do this. And, oh, you might have cancer. And, oh, we can do this. And I just say, nope, sorry, can't do that. No. And I listen because usually when they tell me something from the other side, they don't lie.
Yeah.
And they don't lie. They have no purpose in lying to me. So I listen to what they say because generally speaking, everything they tell me is truth. And everything that I hear over here is like wrong.
Yeah.
So, just like Donald Trump not winning. Everybody's like,
don't
oh, no,
get me going on that.
I told you he was going to win.
We have a show, and it's tomorrow night. It's called The Shift. And we talk about stuff that has to fall into place before things, these kind of prophecies. I hate the word prophecies, but stuff that's going to happen. And that would... That would have been, excuse me, I just had something pop up in front of me on the screen here I try to get rid of. It's like a bug.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh, that's haunted. But he is where he's supposed to be at this point in history.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we are...
You know what bothers me is that 10 years ago, I guess it was, I did that a TV show in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had predicted all these things, and I predicted that Hillary was going to be president, but that William Jefferson Clinton had to pass on before she could be president. So I had all these producers calling me this last election going, well, do you think Bill Clinton's going to die? Do you think this is going to happen before? And I said, no, I don't. Donald Trump's going to be president. Hillary's not going to be president. And they're like, oh, no, that can't happen. I said, if Bill Clinton doesn't die, Hillary isn't president. And they just were like, oh, you're wrong. You're wrong about this. I said, the minute I saw Trump come down that escalator, I called my mother and said, he's going to be president. She's like, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. It's going to happen. It's meant to be. And that is something that I had not foreseen. And that I met Trump several times, and I never saw it when I was around him, never thought it, nothing. And so when I met him, I was always impressed by how he treated the people that he was around when he was in the same area as I was, because it was all women. Every single time I was around him, he was supportive, trying to further their careers, trying to find out, what just what made these women tick and how he could help them. So all of the things that I had seen and heard from the left media, it just didn't click with me. I knew it was wrong, and I knew he was going to be president the minute I saw him come down that escalator. And I also knew that anybody that could do business like he did, and I had seen him conduct a business deal, I was like, oh my goodness, if somebody can do that, and then that's who I want running things. That's what I thought. But I was always impressed by him, how he treated these people that I was around, that he was around at the same time. And so I could only go by my experience with him, not other people's experience, or quote their experiences that were, fictitious and wrong and incorrect. I mean, there were a couple of things. He does say some silly, stupid things. I mean, he does say things that are just out there sometimes, but he's a master manipulator and a master PR guy. So there you go. I don't think he's mean, and I don't think he's spiteful, and I don't think he wants anything bad for the United States. So that's just my opinion.
No, and that's it.
Not yours, James.
Oh, no. What we're talking about is he has to be in that place, just like there's some, and this isn't political. This is where mankind has to go. In North America, he's in place. In Australia, there is a group called the One Party coming out of nowhere. We have a lady running in France. We have an extreme right group in the Netherlands. We've got Germany coming up. All these people, and these are all parties, are coming out of nothing. And they are going to be in a position that will cause. Well, think about it, and you could go into, and this is, again, we're skipping a day because this is the shift all over, but we've discussed this with a couple of spirit guides, and it has to be. There hasn't been.
It's meant to be.
Yeah, it's meant to be. There hasn't been two people working in an office who grew up or worked together for 20 years. And we're best friends, and all of a sudden, one is this political party and one is that political party, and they're going, "Oh my God, this is how could you have voted this way, and how could you have voted that way? Why are they so just so opposite, but to the point of throwing punches? This hasn't happened before."
Yeah. No, I've never seen anything like it. And you have to understand, remember, James, I'm not political. I'm not red. I'm not blue. I'm purple, because I want what's best for humanity. Yeah. I want what's best for the United States. I want what's best for Germany and Russia and just I want what's best for everyone on this planet, because people tend to think, souls here on this planet seem to think that this is all there is, and it's not. It's a universal. It's universal. It's multidimensional, and so it's just right where it's supposed to be. Now, I will tell you that I did have this producer call me and say, "Okay, well, so is Hillary going to run again?" And that just happened this last week. I haven't told you about this yet, but anyway, and I said I haven't looked into it. However, every one of those predictions that I made 10 years ago has come true. So that is the only prediction that I made on that newscast that day that has not happened. So I cannot imagine that will not happen.
I see. Now, this opens up a whole whack of questions for me. In fact, this first 45 minutes has filled up a binder of questions. I want to touch real brief. We're going to conclude this part of it, but I want to get your opinion on, because all these people have been put in positions of power in areas around the world, and it's almost like it's a bit of a conflict. You've got 50% of the population on one side and 50% on the other side. Where is that going? What have you been seeing? And again, we talk about this on the shift, but where do you see these conflicts, this polarization heading?
Oh my goodness. Well, that is a loaded question, because
yes.
Are you asking what do you think is going to happen to the planet? Do you think that I think that there is going to be, they're trying to push for a one world order? Do you think that I'm asking you these questions now? Are you thinking that there is like this 666, the mark of the beast, the whole thing? Do you want me to go down that one?
No, I think my opinion, and just the way I'm kind of looking at this, is that we're due for a cleansing, and
yes,
we're baby steps. We basically live off of the earth, not with the earth. And I think we're taking these steps towards, if we don't smarten up as a race, a human race, and we keep living and taking from the earth, we are put in positions of where we're going to knock each other back. And it's kind of paralleling with a number of other things that have happened. We've got a whole bunch of people awakening to the fact that they're empathic. And
I heard that recently. A lot of people have been saying, I'm an empath. I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. I'm like, very good. Welcome to my world.
Yeah, because it's only
that's a good thing.
It's traditionally been 5% of the population, and 65 to 68% of them are women. So, but I guess that part of us is awakening. Mine hit in 2012. Other people's was earlier. Other people's was like last Wednesday. Things are happening. The other thing, and I think I may have told you about this, we talked on the phone one day, that a number of the psychic and popular psychics who have a great following, their spirit guides have taken a step back, and an ET, or an extraterrestrial spirit guide, has come in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we did talk about that. And what I told you on that was,
you said no.
There's so many levels and dimensions into things that I just really believe that we're not alone in this universe, in this reality for the universe. Remember, there's multi-dimensions, there's all kinds of other realms out there that most humans cannot comprehend, because you're not supposed to. What you're supposed to be doing is being in this reality, living in the moment, because this moment is the only one that matters. If you are doing what you're supposed to do while you're in this reality, understanding that you're supposed to learn while you're here, because what you learn is what the universe learns, because we're like little seedlings, and we are planted, and then we grow, and it's just like a flower, a petal of a flower. It starts at the base, of the flower, and then the petal goes out and comes back to the flower. And when that petal is out and it's collecting the sunlight and the oxygen, and it's giving off carbon dioxide, and it's out there to collect the rain, that petal is doing its job. So we are like those petals. We come here, we're planted here, we grow, we learn, we die. And when we go back, we take all the information, we have our life review, and all those bubbles of everything that's happened in this lifehood that we have here goes to the other side, and the universe learns from it. The universe being God, the universe being an alien, the universe being whatever or whomever, it's a learning process. But if you are here and you're not learning and you're more worried about what's going to happen tomorrow or what happened in the past, then you're not doing a good job of being here. You need to be here in the moment and learn that this is it for right now. This is it. Everything that happens to you is very important. Each day, each moment, each second. And then you take it back with you. Now, most humans are not awake enough to understand that we are not alone within this universe. And it's just very difficult. They're still stuck in all of the biblical or the Quran, which is just a nightmare at this point, that a certain entity would think that their beliefs are so much more important and they're so stagnant that they would chop somebody's head off and go back to the 13th century, 14th century, 15th century, where you can chop somebody's head off because they don't walk the same walk that you do, is insane. It's insanity to me. And I just don't even know how we've gotten back to that point. I thought we were progressing, and obviously half the human race is not. And I'm not saying anything bad against Muslims. I'm saying something bad about radical Islamic terrorists. Those are, that's just totally different. So that's a whole other subject. So anyway,
well, actually,
I went off again, didn't I, James?
No, it actually, Marianne, it fits in kind of what we were talking about. There has to be a yin and yang. There has to be that negative, and we haven't had a negative since a real nasty negative, probably since the mid to early 1980s. After the wall came down, we did miss. We had chances of nuclear war, very, very close, that a lot of people don't know about, and that kind of subsided. Then this has come up. So we've always had this horrid group around. Now,
actually, I'm going to correct you just a little bit. James, we have had people leaving in droves in the 90s. We had them leaving in the 80s. Generally speaking, that's in the African countries. You can have just whole total populations of people wiped out with Ebola. You had them leaving with not just mean, nasty things, but with disease and famine. And the Sudan, people were dying by the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. I'm not sure about the statistics on that, but I do know that war was not the only thing that was taking people out off of the planet. There also was some major warlords that took the form of like presidents in like Liberia, because when I was in Liberia on the UN peacekeeping mission, I had to be accompanied by Marines because the president in the 80s that was there was massacring people, massacring them. It wasn't just a little bit; it was a lot, and that was such a wild experience because as I was there, they were deposing. I mean, they were taking him out. He was leaving, and so they had bands and armies of people that were hacking people to death with machetes. So while they weren't using a nuclear bomb, I mean, they were using stuff similar to what ISIL is using now. Just crazy. I mean, amounts of people that were dying. And just because someone's skin color is black or dark brown doesn't mean it's any less of a life. It's not, doesn't work like that. That's still a child. Those were still, villages of people.
It does work it does work like that for the media. You could have you could have the entire Congo disappear, and you won't hear about it. But one Kardashian later, and we're all over the place. Friends of mine in the Royal Canadian Police were stationed in the Balkans, in the former Yugoslavia, where they cleansed entire villages, men, women, and children.
Exactly.
And mass graves, and having to go excavate them and investigate war crimes. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. But we don't, after that war was kind of over, even our government here, they covered up a battle that the Canadian peacekeepers were in, protecting a city. And the battle went on for a few days, and they kept the city from being wiped out. And because they were actually in a firefight as peacekeepers, the federal government of Canada didn't say out loud that it happened, because that would look bad to a bunch of peacekeepers from Canada. And it was 10 years later they were actually acknowledged for saving those people. It was very bizarre. Anyway,
so when I'm saying that, I mean, while it appears, and as we've all grown to know, we can't exactly trust the media at this point any longer, which I knew all along, because when I went to work cases, I would see what the media was being told, and then I would see what they would report. And then, of course, I've had it happen to me where I make a statement and then they edit it and chop it up, and it says something totally different than what I said. And then I don't speak to that news media outlet anymore. That's it. You're done.
And they don't know
up
why.
One time.
Yeah.
No, they do know why. I tell them, no, I can, and I will never be on your show again. Don't ask me, because you ruined that, and I don't trust you anymore. So. Yeah. And so I've had them come back to me and say, oh, well, we won't do this and we won't do that. And while I don't really care for a lot of what CNN has done right now, because I've seen things from them, when I was on CNN, they did report it properly. For me. Now, for other people, I can tell you straight up they didn't. NBC is where I had a problem. So anyway, I won't go into that. But...
Okay.
I just think that we have gotten off on a lot of different subjects. I told you to give me talking points.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to be taking the top of the hour break coming up in a couple of minutes. And just for those who are hanging on the edge of their seats, we are going to come back. We have a question you can think about on the break, Marianne, is what are the differences between free will and destiny? Like if someone's supposed to happen or meant to happen, and something, can you manifest it yourself? Can you change anything? That was just in from one of our chat rooms. The other things that we want to touch on is some of your cases, some of the bigger cases. I'm not going to hold you down to which president and his wife you were the medium psychic for, but you do have some really cool stories, and I know you know the world's all going to be good, even though you're stockpiling food somewhere, Marianne, and you're going to have to tell me where that is, because it's no good.
I do have a stockpile, and you know that.
I know.
Actually, I have 3 of them. So.
Oh, they're called caches or caches. It's good to have that, but remember, you have to tell somebody where they are, or they're no good, because you can't find them on your own. If you're on you will be on horseback. You have horses. Oh man,
I do have horses.
Oh,
everybody always asks me, why do you keep all those horses? And I say, because I don't ever want to have to walk.
Yeah, and something's coming, isn't it, Marianne? Okay, that's too creepy.
I would rather be prepared than not.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I want to be totally prepared. Unfortunately, I live 298 feet above sea level, and I was told to move 200 feet above sea level. So I'll be at my front door with a big pole pushing the bodies off my porch. Give it right back with more from our guest, Marianne Morgan, right after
This is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small, you're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Revealer Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings. No matter where you are, it's time for you to make time for you.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by SpacedOutRadio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. It is I, like Dave said, James Tyson, and we are on Spaced Out Weekend with Marianne Morgan. And we're taking that deep breath and composing ourselves and getting back to Marianne. Oh, before I drag her out, kicking and her, being Marianne, out kicking and screaming, I want you to go, if you're interested in a reading, you go check out Marianne's website, mariannemorgan.org. Again, that's www.mariannemorgan.org. You'll be able to read all about her, what she's up to, her television appearances, and her new book, Just One Question. I used to hate that. I used to do the police talk in schools, and I would walk up, and at the front of the class, I'd write on the board, what if, just 2 words, and I'd underline it, and I said, you could ask me anything you want, as long as it doesn't start with what if, and all the hands would go down, because all the kids would want to ask, well, what if I was walking down the street, and or what if I, think, kids, rephrase this, come on. But thank you very much for dropping by this evening, Marianne. Now, before we went to the break, we had one of the questions was destiny versus free will. What is the difference between that when it comes to, like we say, we have kind of the Akashic record or the blueprint? How can we vary from our blueprint, or can we?
You really can't. What happens is, before we come here in this reality, we sit down with the Creator, our angels, and our guardian, and we go through all of the possibilities for what can happen here. And like the alphabet, A through Z, all of the things that are not what can happen here, but the things that are going to happen here to you. And no matter what you do in this reality, except for if somebody else imposes upon your free will, those things are going to transpire while you're in this reality. Where it gets into the free will portion of it, you're going to go from, we'll do a scale of 1 to 10. You're going to go from 1 to 10. But, and I use the word, I should say however, between 1 and 10, there's a number of different possibilities that you can pick from. And this is not even as good an example as I normally choose. But what happens is you have almost an infinitesimal amount of choices that you can make and forks in the road that you can take to get from point A to Z. And the point is that you are going to have these markers that happen to you all along the way. You are going to get married. Well, maybe you get married more than once. Maybe you marry somebody that is a landscaping architect more than once. However, there was only really one landscaping architect that you were supposed to marry and have a good life with. So I'm just using that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to have a child. Well, maybe you were going to have a child and you decided to get an abortion. Well, that soul from that aborted child knew that you were going to do that. And so that child's soul really was never put into the body of that child, which is a whole other discussion. But I'm using that example as to say you were supposed to have a child, and then you end up having a child, and then you end up having, an anxiety in your life because you feel like that you weren't supposed to have the abortion and you did, or something like that. But what I'm saying is there's all these different spots in your life, markers, we'll call them markers, that you're supposed to hit and do because you've been predestined them from the other side. It's predestined by the Creator. The free will comes into play about the choices that you make in between those markers. Okay. That's what the free will is. And even the Creator knows what you're going to do as the soul. You're given the freedom to have that choice on those, on those free will choices. Even those choices are known by the Creator.
Wow.
So wrap your head around that one.
I'm trying to. Now, you have died how many times?
As far as had near-death experiences?
Yes.
5.
5. And
5.
And you knew they were coming.
Gone through the tunnel twice. Knew that they were going to happen. However, didn't want to leave. I chose not to leave. Not that I didn't want to. I've often said I can go back home anytime. I'm happy with it because I'm a messenger of sorts, and also I've been given an extraordinary gift to help people, and I try to use it to the best that I can. I do many other things besides being a psychic investigator. You know this because we've talked about it before. In order to function here in this reality, I have to do things that really ground me to this reality so I can stay. Because otherwise, I'd be out in La La Land half the time.
What do you mean by that?
I have my horses.
Yeah,
I have my horses. I actually function in like normal jobs. I'm an auditor. You know what I'm saying? I have other things that I do besides the psychic television, the helping on cases. I only take, at this point in my life, I only take so many cases. I will only work at so many at a time, about 120 at the maximum at a time that I will work on now. I get probably, 1,000 emails a week. Probably out of those, I pick maybe 10. And from those 10 readings, and then from the ones that are about missing children, the missing children thing bothers me a lot. I have to really feel it, like be told to work on that case at this point. Just so much. It's just so much. So I try to have things that keep me here in this reality that really ground me. And but anyway, back to your question. Did I answer it? Did you understand what I said, or do you think your listeners understood it?
I think they did. Yeah, the person who asked the question definitely did.
Okay.
One of the things that a number of the things I want to talk to you about is, and what is of interest to the listener, is your experience being able to help people find their children and their loved ones. One of and you've hit a couple of the kind of the bigger public eye ones. Natalie Holloway with Dave Holloway, her father. The young lady went missing in Aruba. How did you get involved in that one?
Actually, I'd worked with this group called Texas Equisearch on other missing children cases, and one of the girls that worked with the group, and then Tim Miller, they called me and said, do you think you can help on this? Because this is just a nightmare. And what they didn't know was it had been on the news already, and she had actually come to me and stood by my bed and gave me, well, I can't remember. It's been so long ago now, but I'm still good friends with Dave and his wife, not Beth Holloway, Beth Twitty. I'm not friends with her, but with Dave and his wife I am. And she had given me 3 pages or 13 pages? No, 13 pages of notes about everything that had happened to her. And I got up in the middle of the night and sat at the end of my bed and wrote it all down. And she literally stayed. Her presence stayed and fed me all this information. And so when Tim Miller called me, I said, well, you know, I don't believe this. She already came to me and told me all this information. He goes, no, I do believe it. He goes, I believe that, you know, anything that you tell me, I believe. So, and I said, yeah. So, and he goes, I'm booking your plane ticket. And that was it. And then he told Dave about me. And Dave was a real, religious man.
Yeah.
And, he, you know, really, Bible. And he was like, oh my gosh, you know, my church is going to be upset. And his pastor actually told him, he goes, no, Dave, there are people with gifts like what she has. That's what they told him. And so then when I told him what was on these, there were notes that I had that there was no way I could know these things. And one of the things, just one, because it's a little personal, is his daughter, Natalie, had been invited by his youngest daughter to a play at Christmas time in the family living room where she charged $0.25 for each seat. And the little girl got up and sang the song, Gone Away is the Bluebird, Walking in the Winter Wonderland.
Yeah.
And I described the room, that Natalie had been there and the little girl had charged her $0.25. There was no way I could know that. And that when I told Dave that, he started to cry because he knew that his daughter was gone at that point.
Yeah.
And that she was trying to, you know, reach out from the other side. And then also she had told me and that there was one other small detail that I won't get into that was personal for Dave, and it was a concrete 100% slam dunk that Dave knew it was Natalie talking to him. And so then she had gone on and told me what had happened, who was responsible, and that was information that I shared with Greta Van Susteren, and then Greta went into the household of Joran Vandersloot and Paul Vandersloot, and found out the details, and then we knew more. But unfortunately, the government of Aruba, the police of Aruba, were very, very crooked, and there was no way we were ever going to get anything done over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were all involved, you know?
Yeah, and then karma happened, and he got picked up in Peru or Chile or something with another
he
poor
was
girl
in Peru. Suitcase, yeah. But unfortunately, you know, the ones in between, then a lot of people didn't know that he had raped a girl off of a cruise ship out of Boston. And you should have seen the face of the magistrate when I told her that one. And she already knew about it. And I was with Vinda de Souza, who was the attorney for Dave Holloway. And when I popped that one off, Vinda did not know it. And the director did know about Joran's previous escapades. And she's just like, how did you know that? And I'm like, because I am truly a psychic. You know, I have a lot of things I know. I said, let me tell you about your kids. You know, because I was kind of getting mean at that point, just because, you know, I wanted him to listen to me. And when we figured out that they were not playing ball, we pretty much knew that we had to do everything on our own, get our own government involved, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then our government used it to do a flyover, which was so stupid and ridiculous because they used that to do a flyover Venezuela at the same time. They were opportunists. So that was a whole nother, that was a whole nother ballgame. Anyway, so yes, about, what was your original question on that?
What's the capital of Ecuador? No, the original question was how you got involved in the actual Natalie Holloway.
Yeah, and so Tim Miller had actually called me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'd worked with him I actually worked with him on the Caylee Anthony case as well.
And you came to a conclusion on Natalie Holloway, and it was that you would never, her body was not ever going to be found. Right.
I had told them on several newscasts, they were saying, well, if you have 15 pages or 13 pages of notes and she's told you all these things, why can't you find her body? And I said, and I really felt bad saying it in front of Dave, but he and I had already spoken about this, and we pretty much knew. And I said, because it's not findable. It was made not findable. And, when things are put in the ocean's a big place. A lot of times, it's made where it's not findable, and that's, that was Joe Scarborough I told that to. Or was it Sean Hannity? I can't remember which one, but they kind of got, pushy with me on it. I think it was Sean Hannity. And I said, because it's not findable.
Yeah.
And so he shut up after that, He's like, if you have all these pages of notes and you're talking to her. And I said, just because somebody tells you where they're at doesn't mean you're going to find them.
Correct. And
now, a lot of other cases I've found then, and, I can narrow it down, but not Natalie.
No. And I think sometimes it's not it's not in the cards for a specific...
It's not meant to be. It's not predestined. It's not meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
You've got a body somewhere, and it's not meant for the police to find it or the family to find it within that year. It's somebody else's destiny to find the remains 5 years from now.
And which is exactly what happened with the Loretta Bowersock case. I told her daughter that she would not find the body, and I told her who would find the body, and it happened exactly like I said it would.
Yeah, and that was where you saw it beside a blue one-story building beside one of the kids' little spinny playground things.
Yes, and I could hear the children playing, and it was an old motor inn, like an old motel, like from
the 50s or
like out of the movies. Yeah, and the kids had played there in the past, and I could hear the children playing, and I could see the color of the side of the hotel. And that was I always found it funny, this portion, which the whole thing wasn't funny, but just this portion, the description from the detective driving down the dirt road in the middle of the desert in Arizona, and after his and mine's discussion about what the area looked like. I kept telling him that I could see all this blue. There was blue everywhere. It wasn't the sky. It was blue paint and the smell of blue. He said, well, how do you smell something blue? And I don't know. I said, it's just the environment of this, what I can smell and what I see is this blue. It's like ice blue, and you have to just, it's just this very odd color of blue. And he said he got nauseous as he was driving down the road, and he had to stop the car and get out of the car for a second once he saw the blue, because he said then he realized, and he, not that he had been a skeptic of mine, but he realized that there was more to this reality than what he had ever thought of as a detective when he saw the blue motel.
Wow.
He said he was just as, and he says that on Psychic Investigators, I think he said it. He's just like, if you have ever had the feeling come over you where you're just totally creeped out. I didn't think the word he used was creeped out. And I had to stop and get on my car for a second and squat down because I thought I was going to pass out. And this is like the seasoned detective, that he's so tough and everything. So it was just really, it was interesting to see.
That's what happened to me when a psychic pulled out my mother's name out of a hat. My mother's name was Lexa, Lexa. And I'm looking at her, and the wheels, the gears are going in my head saying, well, okay, how did you guess, quote unquote, guess that? Mm-hmm. This is the first time I'd ever talked to a psychic, and she's describing my mother, then pulling her name out of a hat. That is weird. And I can understand because you're looking at it with a very almost skeptical,
narrow,
a little narrow. Yeah, let's call it narrow, because I went in, I made the appointment to talk to a psychic, so I was open, but I was waiting for to see a card up her sleeve or something. But it's that floored me. And then after that, everything she said was that I knew about was true. And then after that, it was like a projection or a little bit into what was going to become of the challenges I was going through. And I'm just, gobsmacked at that point. And so I can understand what this guy felt when he saw the blue building and understood exactly what you described. And that feeling of, well, yeah, she might be good. Yeah, we'll see how this works. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's completely...
Yes. And then he's called me since then, to work on cases with him. However, I sometimes I can, sometimes I can't work with him. Now, and then that happens to a lot of them that I work with. They're so blown away by things, and then they start using psychics, but then they have to try to, fix it to where it's in this reality, for cases, So it's hard to do that because well, where'd you find out this evidence? Well, I have a psychic that.
Well, I can't remember her name.
That's why I went and got my criminal law degree. You knew that, right? That's why I did that. So when they're dealing with the higher ups at these police departments, they can say, well, she's got a degree in criminal law. So that's why I did that, even though I really didn't need that. I did it anyway.
Well,
I was sort of ordered to do that.
The psychic out of California who got a phone call about a missing man, and she tells the people on the phone to get a hold of the family, tell them to get in their cars and drive south on whatever highway in Louisiana. And they did it, and they ended up seeing their missing brother's truck, and they followed it. It led to the arrest and eventual people confessing to his murder. But when they went to trial, they had to articulate on why they were driving down the highway. And they said a psychic in California told us to. So guess who got pulled from California to Louisiana? And she was the first one to be sworn in as a witness, because they had to go right back to the beginning on why those people were on the highway at that point, which led to the truck, which led to the arrest. So that was kind of interesting that at least they accepted that evidence in court right off the bat, which was the very first domino that fell. And as a police officer, I need that show of consistency on why did you look in that specific location? Well, I was drawn there because so-and-so told me to. And now I'd have no problem with saying, well, Marianne said, the gun was under the bed. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get a warrant with that information. Not yet, anyway. Maybe in 20 years we'll be allowed to do that, but we'll see.
I actually did get a warrant, though, one time. Not me, but the police department I was working with, because this story I'll tell this one quickly. I was working with the police department up in Wisconsin. They called me in because of an old murder. I mean, it was 20 years old, cold case. And they just wanted to see if I could help at all. Well, I was sitting in the room talking to a detective, and I said, well, we had been going through things. I had walked him through the whole place. I told him about we'd been out driving around. I told him about a gas station that was no longer there, what the gas station looked like, because I could go into time and I could see what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it, who was the person behind the cash register and all that. at that moment of time, because it was in the middle of the night, this young girl was walking, and then they found her the next morning far away on this person's property, dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so, long story short, I had been through all of this stuff all day long. We found out that I told them who it was right away, and they're like, oh, well, he's a rich person, but he lives in Alabama now, or Florida. He lives in Florida. And I said, I don't care where he lives now. He killed this girl, and brutally killed her, actually. And so they said, well, we don't have any evidence of it. And I said, yes, you do. I see a bag of evidence. And so they were like, well, we have a bag of evidence. And I said, right. And inside that bag of evidence is, I told you, I saw them smoking cigarettes in the car. They stopped at this gas station to buy the cigarettes. And so they said, yeah, but there's only a package of cigarettes in there. I said, yes, but what's inside the package of cigarettes? Now, this girl that had passed over came to me and said, look inside the package of cigarettes. Now, they've had this evidence sitting in this bag for 20 years. 20 years. So we go in, we put the gloves on, get the bag of evidence out, and it's truly a baggie. And they go, and I said, there's something inside the cigarettes, because I said, remember, I've seen them smoking in the car, right?
Yeah.
And inside the package of Marlboro cigarettes, and she had told me, she goes, it's inside the Marlboro, the red carton of Marlboro cigarettes. And it's not a carton, it was the plastic kind, that the old kind of plastic one. They don't even have those anymore, they're in box. But this one was in the floorboard of, it wasn't in the floorboard, it was by her body, okay? And so when they were cleaning up the crime scene, they picked up this thing of cigarettes and thinking it's hers, right? But it's evidence, so they got to put it in the bag. Inside this thing of cigarettes is a half-smoked cigarette with guess whose DNA on it. And that was it, and they got him because of the DNA. Because it put him at the crime scene with the cigarettes, because the person at the gas station could describe the car, but didn't know who was driving it.
Right. Well, that's...
And the girl came in to get the cigarettes. Okay, now, I had not seen the bag of evidence. Okay, I had not seen it yet. So we're driving back to the police station, and I'm sitting there telling them about the bag of evidence. And then I said, and she says to tell you about the package of Marlboro cigarettes. The plastic kind.
Yeah.
And so we get back there, and those police officers about died when they pulled out that bag of evidence. Then they popped the side of the of the cigarettes, and here comes out this half-smoked cigarette, and and obviously it has his DNA on it. So
very cool.
That was an interesting one. Yeah, it was one of those interesting cases where the police officers actually get that. Now, I wasn't called to testify on that, but I didn't need to be. They had the DNA.
Yeah, you weren't in the chain of evidence.
They had it. Yeah, no, I'm just the one that brought it to their attention that they had to have the evidence for 20 years. Although, 20 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to do the DNA.
Yeah, they was still pretty...
It happened right at the time.
Yeah, pretty still new. And it changes, yearly. We've got it. But aren't you glad that somebody gave their DNA? Oh, sorry. Actually, it's funny. Anybody who commits in Canada, no, James.
Yes, dear. They got a warrant for his
DNA.
For the DNA,
yeah.
From that, yeah.
In Canada, anyone who commits a violent crime or what we call a major crime, like a number of break-ins, like large break-ins, a part of their sentencing on conviction is they have to submit to the National DNA Bank. And that goes right to aliens. I'm kidding. Now, you worked on Lacy Peterson and little Caylee Anthony. And you've also, I know you've worked on a couple of more, and I can't remember if those are the ones we're not allowed to talk about. Yeah. So
there's some that I don't want to talk about because of the government ones, and I'm going to mention those.
Yeah, and some other one where you work for defense counsel?
In
California?
I'm not talking about that one.
You can't?
No.
Yeah.
No, because
And,
I have a non-disclosure agreement on that one.
Oh, then I'll talk about it. I'm kidding. I don't have anything, and I'll just make it up as I go along. So what president did you work for?
You know I can't tell you that one.
Oh, okay.
I can't tell you that.
Why not? Is he still alive?
His wife. No.
No, it was his wife, and she passed away not too long ago, actually.
Stop.
Oh, you're telling me to stop? You're the one who wanted to tell me when and how I was going to die.
No, I told you I would not tell you that. You said, "Oh, tell me how I'm going to die. Tell me when."
Oh.
And I said, "Absolutely not telling you that. Don't you throw that back at me."
No, you said, "Well, don't you want to check off your bucket list and stuff like that?" And I said, "No."
I didn't tell you that. I said I told you that I would tell you how long you had to check out for your bucket list if you wanted to know. But really, why would you not? I mean, I understand why most people don't want to know, but you, understanding how it really works in this reality and what's going on, I would think you'd want to make sure you had enough time to get it all done.
I'm still baby stepping into this. I've gone from didn't know I could read oracle cards to reading oracle cards. I didn't tell you this. At one of my card reading courses, I pulled out 15 or 20 business cards. Just all the same. They're just my business cards. And I had the lady shuffle them, put 7 of them down with the white side of the card down, and I flipped them over and read them. Just the white side of the card. Yep. And I picked up that her son was going to be going to the doctors at the end of February and not to worry about it. And she's staring at me saying, yeah, he's going on the 26th. And I said, it's not what you think. And it's basically her son is just, he's coming into his own little psychic ability, and which was giving him migraines. It wasn't anything bad. It was just, he was trying to deal with all this energy coming in. And she's staring at me like, how did you get that from flipping over a business card? And I looked at her and said, really, I don't even need cards anymore. I can look at somebody and do it. So it's weird.
I've never used cards. The only thing that I do is, the pendling. I do that still if I want some kind of real clarification that I can't get through the vortex, because it's sometimes hard getting things through the vortex.
What now? Describe this.
Seeing things.
Describe the vortex. What is that? Is that what I would call the veil, or
the veil? Yeah, I call it the vortex because I've just always called it the vortex. I call it the vortex because that's what they say to me. They don't say the veil.
Okay.
They don't say the veil. They call it a vortex, and I don't know. I just repeat what I hear, and so when I see through the vortex, sometimes, like, for instance, if I see a car and it's a white car, I always clarify that by saying it's either a light blue, white, or silver car.
Right.
And because it can be, white, that real light blue or silver, because just looking at it through the vortex, I just can't quite tell. Same with black and navy blue. Sometimes I will see a black car, and then I'll say, but it could be navy blue, and that's the way I clarify that.
Yeah.
Just because it's just the way, the way I see things through the vortex. It's kind of hazy sometimes. So I will pendle so I can say, is it a blue car or a navy blue or black car? And then they'll tell me which one it is. So that's the only tool I use. I've never used a tool ever besides that. Never cards.
I want to touch on this with Dr. Gary Schwartz, University of Arizona, Tucson, and the Human Energy Systems Laboratory. What the dickens is that? And what did you do there?
It's no longer, Gary's no longer doing that. He went to Veritas, and Veritas was the same thing. Hold on a second. I'm trying to open a door right now.
You do that with your mind? No, I'm kidding.
No. Okay, so Veritas was at U of A as well, and that was funded by the Guggenheims from the Guggenheim Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did was we did all kinds of triple-blind studies, which means that, for instance, when I did the triple-blind study, I was in a room by myself with EEG devices stuck to my head. I look like a Martian. I was in a room by myself doing a reading to a person that was in Scotland. And so I'm talking to a person that's sitting behind a partition, and that person is on the phone with a person in Scotland, with a person that's behind a partition, and I'm reading the person behind the partition. What's happened to them. So that was a triple blind study that there's no way I could have any, they couldn't say, oh, it's a man or a woman. Now the person in Scotland that is on the phone could say it was a man or a woman, but they knew not to.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of studies we did, and they were, they could when you replicated it, it's something you could replicate in a way, but it can't be debunked,
Yeah.
They couldn't debunk it, because how in the world could I tell you that the woman that I read for in Scotland was 54 years old? She'd had a daughter die in a red car accident.
Wow.
There was no way. And so from that information, I was given a 92% accuracy rate. So we always, how I joke with you, you only have an 8% chance of me being wrong.
Yeah.
So you better listen to me, because there's only an 8% chance. No, and I always kid about that. However, it's really accurate, because, I did several studies like that. And it wasn't just one. There were quite a few. And I wasn't the only one. It's John Edwards. Who else? Alison Dubois.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think who else was there. There was Mary Ochoa. James von Prague wouldn't do it. What's her name? She was my friend. Oh my gosh, Sylvia Brown.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't do it. She just didn't want it. She. It's not that she didn't want to. She didn't have time, and her health wasn't that great at the time.
Yeah.
So there was really no reason for her to do it. She was very accurate, and she was on Montel Williams' show all the time, and she was very nice. I had an impression of her that I would do, and everybody would crack up. Even she would crack up, because I would do it of her, because she was smoking a cigarette. I don't believe, I just don't believe you're right. And God dang, can't you? Are you dumb and stupid? That's what she would say. Are you just dumb and stupid? And she would just go on, and she was abrasive, but my goodness, was she good. She was really a good psychic, really good. And she would just literally talk to those on the other side. She really didn't have, when she would describe it to you, she would just say, no, I just talked to those on the other side. She would not do remote viewing. She could tell you how to do it, but she didn't use it. She didn't utilize it. So Anyway, but at Veritas at the end, it actually was a real documented study where they did papers on it, and they published them, and we were published in all these journals. And then Odyssey came in, did a show. Nova came in. MSN, let me see. No, not CNN. Yeah, MSN. I think it was MSNBC came in and did a study, and then Dateline did one and tried to, prove John Edwards to be a fraud, and then they did it to me, and they couldn't prove anything that I said was fraudulent or that I did anything fraudulent. In fact, I scared the pookidoo out of their producer because I just was like, I have had it with you, buddy. And so, anyway, and then the time that I was on with Tom Brokaw, when I was on with the psychic they're the ones that it's called Psycorps, and then they come in, and the Randy dude and everything. Well, and they're atheists, so I was on there, and he said he was really rude and mean, and he said to me, I don't believe what you're doing, da 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 da, and I just looked at him and I said, my grandmother, I was raised in Oklahoma by a Southern Baptist grandmother who was a psychic, by the way, and she always told me, "Cast thee not pearls before swine," which is out of the Bible, and then she said, and then I said, and then when she really got mean, because we are down home kind of people, she'd say, "Hey, never try to teach a pig to sing. It's a waste of time and it annoys the pig." And Tom Brokaw goes, "Oh my God, she's calling him a pig now," because I was meaning that towards him. And then I asked him. He kept on, and I said, if you're an atheist, how do you practice being an atheist, believing in nothing? How do you practice? He goes, "I'm a practicing atheist." And I'm like, how do you practice believing in nothing? Why practice it? If you believe in nothing, you should just believe in nothing. Why are you out there saying, "I'm a practicing atheist"? I don't know how you practice that. And then he just kept on, and finally I just said, "And by the way, when you go have your prostate surgery in a couple of weeks, make sure when you're in the hospital that they don't give you any bread because you're allergic to gluten." And I'm not kidding. I mean, everybody, if you could have seen those cameramen's mouths drop, and the guy goes, "How did you know I was having prostate surgery?" And I said, "Gosh, I wonder. Hello, what are we here for? Do I have to prove it to you like that?" "Well, I just did, and you look like an ass." Now, I didn't say that to him, but he did. And so I did it. And then Tom, he had a heart attack, and I had told him he was going to have one, and and then he had it 3 weeks later. So he called me after that and said, "If you ever see anything again, tell me."
Yeah, but I want to hear the good stuff. That's what I want to hear. Oh man, hey, I've got a question.
Yeah, you only want to hear the good stuff, or Tom Brokaw only want to hear the good stuff?
No, I only want to hear the good stuff.
Oh, you only want to hear the good stuff.
Well, there's a question in from all the way in Australia. Can weather patterns scramble your psychic antennae?
No.
No?
Never.
How about...
I can do the same. I can read the same whether it's a cloudy, rainy day, or is lightning, or it's a beautiful sunny day, or it's snowing. That has nothing to do with it. However, the government tries to scramble what people are doing. Yeah.
How?
So anyway, but we won't go into HARP.
Okay.
That's we're not going to go into that right now. I don't want to go down. That's a real long. That's a whole nother discussion.
Oh, great! It's
but
just
they can't scramble mine though. But that's a very interesting question. You would think, that it's not coming from me doing a reading. Isn't coming from this reality anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's coming through the vortex.
That's interesting. In your life as doing this, you've obviously made it all the way up to the age of 36, and you've doing quite well.
Thank you.
You actually do. If I wanted a reading, or my listener wants a reading, you do one reading, correct? You don't. You're not somebody you come to every 3 weeks to see if anything's changed.
No.
Yeah, describe what your reading entails.
I do one reading one time. Now, obviously, if I can predict something for 10 years, which I really, by the way, that was really fascinating to me that I predicted stuff, that far into the future. And if Hillary does run again, she will win. Mm-hmm. So, because Bill Clinton will pass on, and then for whatever reason, that's going to happen. But she has that choice whether she wants to run again. So, I can do readings, and they are for 5 to 10 years in the future.
Yeah.
Why would you want to come to me every week? So I think that's hokey, and it's not good for people to do that. Now, however, I will tell you this: because things are fluid and they change, I do work on cases where I'm consulted about it. If I pick a jury, which I've done in the past, if it's an ongoing legal case and things are fluid in the case, I can see the end result. But however, the parties involved might want some kind of advice along the way, and I will do that. But as just an average Joe Blow calling me and saying, I want to do a reading, and I want you to do a reading for me, and that's it. I do it one time, and I'll never talk to you again. I don't need to. And that is really poor behavior from a lot of psychics that are out there in the world that think they have to have people, they milk people, and I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
Not at all. I don't like that.
If I come to you and I want one of these 5 to 10 year readings, and but you're not going to tell me when I'm going to die, and your reading says, after January 7th, I don't see anything. Like, damn. But I'm not going to tell you when you're going to die. But
no, I would never.
It's
I
only 3 weeks
like
from
that.
now. Okay, good.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it like that. And generally speaking, my guides probably wouldn't put me in that kind of position, because remember, I get about 1,000 emails a week. I have somebody that filters through them that knows what I'm looking for. Then I go through them, and I just am told which ones to take. And I suppose if I got a reading and I was doing the reading, that the person was getting ready to die, which, by the way, is not unheard of, because I had a woman this last year who called me and said, I want to know about my parents. And I said, well, how much do you want to know? And she said, well, I want to know when my dad's going to die. He's sick right now. I said, he's going to die tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And he died the next day. So she actually got off the phone, went over to the house, stayed with him, because he was in hospice, not hospice. He didn't have hospice care. He had perpetual care because he had Alzheimer's. So I actually have had that happen, and it wasn't 3 weeks. It was the next day. And it was late in the evening the next day, but it was the next day that he passed. And then she called me the day after that and said, oh, my gosh, you were right on. So they were prepared for that, though. I would not do a reading for somebody and get that information and pass that information on if that person didn't have any kind of knowledge that they were leaving in 3 weeks or a month or 6 months. I wouldn't pass that on. I would focus on what they could do during that time and what they've done in the past. I think I would focus on those things and about their other members of their family.
Yeah, that would be the best way of doing it. And that's for the listener who's starting off doing any kind of readings or anything like this. That's very important, how to talk to people. And that was the course that I took from one of the psychic people that I live near here. Paisley Town, who is a numerologist. Now Paisley taught, that was their class, was how to properly speak to your client, not to frighten them. Like, you don't flip a card over and go, oh my God, you're going to, oh, sorry. or
you don't do that.
You see them stepping off a curb and breaking their ankle, you would probably just say, walk carefully, pay attention.
Right. I would say, have you ever broken your ankle before? And they would say no. And I say, well, let's be careful about that because, that's a possibility. So let's be careful about what we do. Do we not, maybe not go roller skating, maybe be just a little bit more careful. But I pretty much tune into what the event's going to be, and I can actually see it. So I'd say, when you're walking, since you like to walk so much, this is how I'd say it, because I would have seen that the person likes to walk a lot. Mm-hmm. Since you like to walk so much, I think I'd be really careful, on my daily walks. I'd be careful about curbs and things like that. And then I'd make a joke out of it, and I'd say, well, you know how you can roll your ankle when you step off of a curb sometime, or, if you step into a hole, you can roll your ankle like that. And I said, I'd hate to see you break it. That's how I would say it.
Yeah.
And then, not, I see you breaking an ankle. Now, in a car wreck, that's different. I will say, I see the possibility of a car wreck, so I would prefer you not to drive a silver car or a red car or whatever. If you're not in that silver car or red car or black car, whichever one it is I see, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to have the wreck. However, this last year, I saw a wreck with a burgundy car, and so I was telling everybody, don't drive a burgundy car, don't, stay away from burgundy cars, whatever you do. And who gets in a car wreck on December 23rd with a burgundy truck? Not me, but my son.
Oh.
And everyone had been warned, and it was a bad wreck, so they hit him broadside. So that's what I had seen, and unfortunately, you see, that was meant to happen.
Yeah.
So no matter what I did, no matter who I told, it was still going to happen, and it happened to my child, which is always a tough thing for me because I see things, but because it's my personal stuff, they try to protect me.
Yeah.
So I won't worry about it. I know it's coming. I just don't know how and when. So, but yes, you have to be very careful. Yes, you have to be very careful when you're talking to people because you can horrify people because they don't have their mind wrapped around things like what maybe you do because you're doing things like this, or what I do because it's been my whole life.
Yeah. Yes, and that I've always told people, like, they said, well, could you read me? And I'd say, I can. Well, what if you get something, what if there's something really dangerous or something, I'm going to get hit by a bus tomorrow? And I say, I usually I don't get that. I'm still I'm so far at the front end that if that was going to happen, you wouldn't be coming to me for a reading. I honestly believe that that's not my, as I'm learning how to do this, that's not what, quote unquote, they're going to give me.
Right.
They're going to give me
I understand.
the soft stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've had pets that have passed come through to talk about their present pet and how that pet isn't feeling well. And that was fascinating to me. And someone said, well, you're an animal communicator. No.
Say again? Okay, you had a pet come
I flipped
through
the card, and I said, did you have a black and white cat? And they'd say, yeah. Okay. I'm getting this cat telling me that the little kitten that you have now, please watch out. It needs to drink more water. It's not drinking enough because there's something. I see. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck? I'm getting a cat come through? I'm just repeating what I'm getting,
cats, right? Yeah. Well, no, what happens is animals are pure soul, pure energy. They do not have, if you embody an animal, you're just free spirit. And your time is such shorter time in the reality, and you're just serving a purpose by encompassing and being in that creature. So when cat spirit or dog spirit or whatever goes back to the other side, it can choose to go on and do other things, or it could choose to come back and, it has some connection with that human, and it chooses not to go on. It just chooses to hang out and watch over. But just remember what I told you at the very beginning. There is no such thing as time. So,
right.
Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion. And
the time is an illusion.
That illusion.
Because here in this reality, we make, just like, for instance, when you go into outer space, time is slower in outer space. Yet it's faster. So how's that possible?
It's faster. Well,
you're going around the planet, you're going mighty fast, right?
Well, I know this from...
Our planet is rotating right now. It's very, very fast.
And it's actually...
Yet it's slow.
Shooting through space while it's rotating.
And shooting through while it's rotating. So, you're okay, not only do you have that, and that creates, quote, time, right? But it creates no time at the same time. So that's why I said time is an illusion.
And I remember that if Superman flew the opposite direction that the world was spinning at a very high speed, he could go back into time. Because I remember that when Steve Reeves was doing that Superman thing, or Chris Reeves.
Right, and we all know that Superman was real.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
No, I know.
Speaking of the illusion of time, young lady, the illusion of time.
Are we already done?
We are.
Are you kidding me? That is so fast. I was like, it's going to be, 2:00 in the morning here.
It is.
And you're like, don't worry about it. It's going to go really fast.
I told you it would go fast. It's it does. It does go fast. And I'm going to have to bring you back kicking and screaming someday, and we should open up the phone lines for people to ask you questions. Not readings.
I would love that.
But just ask you questions.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
ask me readings, too. They can ask me questions about stuff. I would love to do that for you. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And for everybody else out there, thank you for dropping by tonight. Again, everybody, High Plains Talk Radio Network, Renegade Radio, United Public Radio, Spreaker, and down in Noonan, Georgia. Thanks very much at 99 Rock the Key. And thank you to Marianne Morgan. And I'm going to hit you up, but maybe in May we'll bring you back kicking and screaming.
Okay. Don't forget I'm doing that TV show, though.
Oh.
I'm doing a new TV show.
And writing a couple of movies.
And writing a couple
Marianne.
movies.
I'll come and visit you.
Okay, come on down.
I will. And everybody else out there, keep an open mind.
That's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go, what are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Run through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!
I see dead people. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Dave's not here!
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.